Hello everybody, Maven here, and I'm sure most of you guys saw that big TWID article Bungie put out recently. It's the one that we typically get at the end of seasons that goes over all of these sandbox changes and exotic buffs and nerfs and overhauls, etc. And it's very exciting because there's a lot of buffs coming in the Edge of Fate. And so today I wanted to make this top 5 list of the buffs that stood out to me the most, the stuff that you're going to want to keep an eye out for when the Edge of Fate comes out. And this is going to be more so of a top 5 buffed builds video rather than just top 5 buffs, but it didn't fit in the thumbnail, so we're just rolling with it. I'll be sure to link the article down below if you haven't seen it and you want to see everything that's getting changed. And now let's break down some buffed builds. Hope you enjoy. Shout out to our sponsor, Advanced GG, the #1 gaming supplement in the world. Use code MAVEN at checkout for 10% off. Link down below. Thank you. Alright, so as a preface to this video, we need to talk about the big melee overhaul coming in the Edge of Fate because this information will be important when we talk about our top 5 buffs. Bungie explained it in detail in the TWID, and I highly recommend reading through it if you would like to learn more. But the TLDR is they're essentially buffing the heck out of melees and melee-based traits and perks, etc., some by up to double the amount of damage they do now, which is awesome. And the way melee perk stacking works is changing, so they no longer multiply into some super huge convoluted math equation. Now they just stack. Nice and easy addition-based first grade math problems. And they left a nice example where two 50% melee damage buffs used to multiply to become a 125% damage increase, but now it's nice and easy to figure out. They'll just stack on top of each other to become a 100% damage increase. Easy to figure out, 50, 50, 100. So stacking a bunch of these perks will result in less damage than before, hypothetically, but the fact that they're buffing all these melee abilities as a whole will far surpass this nerf in terms of power. So basically every melee build you've ever known will be insanely better, except for consecration builds, since ignitions no longer scale with whatever melee buffs you have. So Prismatic Titan may finally be dead after its year-long reign of terror. So that explains the whole melee overhaul thing, and now we can talk about these top 5 buffs. But first, I want to give a quick honorable mention to the Monte Carlo. The Monte Carlo can become a shank if you activate a special reload while you have Markov chain ×5, and this ability obliterates trash mobs into the next dimension. It does an ungodly amount of damage to them, but when you try to use it against majors and beyond, it just tickles them because the damage scales down drastically against that tier of mob. But the Monte Carlo is getting an overhaul to where the melee damage it does is no longer reduced against bosses. So as you can see here, I'm hitting this trash mob for 642,000 damage, but I'm hitting Carl for 210,000 damage, so about a third. But after the buff, I'll be hitting Carl for that full 642k, completely overkilling him in one shot. It's gonna be smacking him insanely hard. It's gonna be smacking harder than your mom did when she asked if you did your homework and you said no. Now, we don't know yet for sure, only time will tell, but I have a feeling that the Monte Carlo has a slight chance to be broken in the Edge of Fate, especially since it gets buffed by things like the Synthocept and Worm God Caress. Speaking of which, that segues us into our first top 5 entry of the day, the Solar Bonk Worm God Caress Titan build. Now, this list is in no particular order, otherwise this build would probably be #1 because it's probably going to be the meta build that everyone will be playing. So this build is affected by 3 buffs in particular that's going to stack its damage through the roof. So first of all, the Worm God Caress's damage ceiling at max stacks will be increased from 275% to 400%. That's a nice 125% damage increase there. And then if we take a look at Roaring Flames, the melee damage bonus is increasing from 73% to 200%. And the melee damage bonus is no longer decreased when paired with things like the Worm God Caress, for example. So these things alone already result in a 600% damage buff to your bonk hammers. But it doesn't stop there. We got one more little toy to play with here, and that's the 1-2 punch perk on shotguns, as well as the new Venutria Thera shotgun hand cannon that may just be the best new weapon to use 1-2 punch with. So 1-2 punch is being increased from a 100% damage buff to a 150% damage buff for your melees, but the most important part about it is that it says that it now works with all melee abilities. So previously it only worked with melee abilities that punched, such as things like Combination Blow, Frenzy Blade, or Grapple. but now it works with everything, including projectile melees like our Bonk Baby Hammer on Solar Titan. So you just run around with your 1-2 punch for Nutria Fera and your Worm God Bonk build, and your Baby Hammer is going to be hitting for 750% increased damage while creating sunspots with Soul Invictus and allowing for infinite radiance and restoration with Ember of Empyrean, but also being reverted back to their pre-nerf spam ability thanks to the new stat Overhaul. So this build is going to be beyond disgusting, and expect to see everyone running it. I guarantee it. But now let's move on to another melee build. You thought the Titan was crazy, wait till you see this. This one is going to be for the Prismatic Hunter. Now I promise this is going to be the last melee build of the day. This melee overhaul was so significant that this top 5 list could easily be nothing but melee builds, but I limited to just a couple, and our other 3 builds will not be melee builds. So anyways, this build will obviously also benefit from the 1-2 punch overhaul for a 150% damage increase to melees, but as you know, the Prismatic Hunter punchy build is based around the exotic class item, typically using the perks of Heart of Inmost Light and Liar's Handshake. This is such a strong combination and one of the most underused builds in the entire game because it just destroys everything and survives extremely well once you get it going. The whole idea of this build is to stack combination blows, in which combination blow will fully refund your gambler's dodge energy, so you just chain these 2 abilities back to back, infinite combination blows while freezing everything with your Winter Shroud, which will then enable Stylish Executioner, so every kill will make you invisible. So that's the plan, and it works out extremely well. And as for the buffs, combination blow currently gives you 309% damage at 3 stacks, but now it's being buffed to a nice and even 400%, so that's a 91% buff there. And now it also works with the grapple melee at full effect, which is a nice tool to add to the build, especially with 1-2 punch. And then the Liar's Handshake, including Spirit of the Liar, will straight up be doubling its damage on that counter punch from 200% to 400%, which is just absolutely absurd. But we got one last little cherry on top, which is Facet of Courage, which is the fragment that increases your light ability damage against targets affected by darkness debuffs, such as the slow or freeze we're applying to everything via Winter Shroud already. And that's being increased from 10% bonus damage to 50%, which is not only a nice little buff for this build, but for prismatic supers in general. Supers are going to be hitting real hard, especially with things like Falling Star on Titan. So you stack all the buffs this Prismatic Liar's build received, and your Liar's Handshake counter punches will be doing exactly 1000% more damage. You thought that the Worm God Titan was the big dog, but hunters have something to say about that. I'm telling you, this is one of the most criminally underused builds in the game as it is. It's so powerful, but after these buffs, you're definitely going to want to try this out. But now we're moving on to our first non-melee build of the day, and since we just covered Titan and Hunter, might as well follow along with a Warlock build, the Starfire Protocol. Unfortunately, the ugly bathrobes are back. It was a rough time back when this thing was the meta because everyone looked like a doofus, and unfortunately it's going to happen again because I guarantee you this will be the most broken Warlock build in the game. The buff the Starfire is receiving is small yet effing gigantic at the same time. It simply says that it now activates on radiant damage, and I cannot begin to express how big this is. Normally, to use this exotic, you gotta be chillin' in an Empowering Rift or Well of Radiance, which is a not very easy or fun thing to do around every corner. Sometimes you just wanna move around and play the dang game, and now we can. You can just walk around with Ember of Empyrean, extending your Radiance forever on Solar Weapon and Ability Final Blows, and Starfire will be feeding you loads of nade energy constantly. Plus, they even doubled the amount of nade energy gained on instances from 2.5% to 5%. And I don't think that small nerf listed below will be too impactful, but I could be wrong. But I feel like not only is a Starfire back to its former glory, but I think it's going to surpass it and be one of the most broken Warlock builds of all time. But even more so, since we're getting the Shield Crush artifact mod that will be pretty much permanently buffing your nade regenerate and damage. So it's just going to be stupidly powerful. So Warlock players, get this build ready and get used to it because you're going to be using it a lot. But now let's chill out for a second and move on to our next build, which is the Actium War Rig Titan. This exotic is getting a buff so auto rifle or machine gun final blows increase their stability, ammo generation, and damage. Stacks up to 10 times higher stacked counts expire more quickly. Now, they don't say the exact damage values. We'll have to wait and see just how good it is. And I don't know about you, but to me, this sounds exactly like what the Peacekeepers do for SMGs, except for auto rifles and machine guns. And the Peacekeepers give SMGs a 100% damage buff. So if the Actium War Rig is equivalent, or at least close to that amount of damage, it's gonna be cooking. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Actium Sweet Business build. It's one of my personal favorite casual Titan builds, and it's extremely strong as it is. I even use it to farm Grandmaster Nightfalls, so it's no slouch. You're just holding down that trigger forever, rarely ever having to reload that Sweet Business, just melting everything in your path with those explosive rounds. And the same goes for Tommy's Matchbook. You're just racking up insane amounts of Scorch and causing ignitions. Very, very strong and fun builds. But now, the fact that it will give you this 10 stack system to potentially give it a 100% damage buff is just incredibly strong. And this build is going to go ham in high level content. And it's probably going to be one of the most noob friendly builds out there because it's literally just point, click, delete without having to think about anything else. Even if it's not a 100% damage buff, even if it's like 40%, still any amount is going to be awesome. And then there's the part where it says higher stacks will also increase your ammo generation. Now, I'm not sure if it's referring to the amount of ammo reloaded back into your weapon by the Actium perk, or if it's referring to the new ammo generation meter we're going to have on our HUD next season. And if it's the latter, then this could potentially mean that this exotic will generate extreme amounts of heavy ammo drops, meaning you'll potentially be able to bot walk around with infinite heir apparent. And if that's the case, then there is some potential for this to be borderline broken if it works out how I'm imagining. Anyways, let's move on to our final build of the day, and I saved this one for last because it is by far the most subjective and niche. It is the Dragon Shadow. Now, I probably don't have any Dragon Shadow gameplay to show since, you can't really record Dragon Shadow gameplay. It just buffs your stats and whatnot. And it's been like 4 years since I did a video on it, and that video even got deleted for some controversy. So I'll probably just put some filler on the screen, like Gear Falcon's Hawkberg or something, I don't know. Anyways, this thing's buff is pretty extensive. So this exotic will now passively increase your weapon stability and ready speed without doing anything. And dodging no longer reloads all your weapons, it only reloads your equipped weapon, so a little bit of a nerf there. And then also dodging further increases your stability and handling, and also increases your movement speed, sprint, slide, and ADS strafe speeds, and increases your class ability stat. Now, there are a lot of great bonuses, enough for it to have a chance to be a part of the PvP metagame. But like I said, this one is on the list today because it is subjective for me personally. In PvP, I play controller, and most of you guys watching probably do too. And the fact that this passively increases stability and increases it further after dodging is absolutely massive for controller players. I've wanted something like this to exist for years, and I'm so happy it does. Without a doubt, this will be my new main PvP hunter exotic to use whenever I'm using a semi-auto primary, because semi-auto primaries on controller really benefit from stability, like a ton. It makes such a big impact on controllability. Like, there's a massive difference between a hand cannon with 70 stability versus one with 80. You may not notice a difference on M&K, but on controller, it's night and day. So what this exotic will essentially allow us controller players to do is invest more of our stats into range and sacrifice a bit of stability, because the Dragon's Shadow will make up for that. And that will somewhat allow us to be on a more fair playing field with M&K players, because those guys just dump all their stats to hitting 100 range and have no downside of doing so. Whereas we need to sacrifice some range for stability, otherwise we can't control our weapons. So this exotic is going to be huge for things like hand cannons, pulse rifles, sidearms, and faster firing scouts. Just like the others in the top 5 in this list, we don't know the values of the stats we'll be gaining until we have our hands on it, but even if it's like a passive plus 10 stability and then 10 more for dodging, that will suffice. I really hope the values are greater than that, but if that is the bare minimum, I'll be happy. But if it's something stupid like plus 5 stability, not gonna lie, I'll be pretty bummed, because like I said, this exotic effect is something I've wanted for years, so I hope it's done right. So Bungie, please don't let us down. And that's going to do it for our top 5 buff builds of the day. And if you read the article yourself, which buff are you looking forward to the most? Let me know in the comments. Maybe there's something significant I might have missed. I'm sure someone will let me know. And real quick, before we wrap this one up, I know I did the Monte Carlo honorable mention earlier, but I just wanted to quickly throw in one more honorable mention, and that's the Geomax stabilizers, which are getting a nice buff. I heard some people already complaining about this being a big nerf, but nope, it's actually a buff. If you run 100 in your super stat or more, it increases any source that would generate super energy, actually resulting in greater super gains than it currently does. So it's kind of a buff. And they also massively buffed the sprinting to top off your bolt charge ability, so now you get to 5 bolt charge, and then you can sprint for 2 seconds and you'll top off the 10 stacks. So it's going to be really spammy with the bolt charge and supers, and I think it's still going to be a top tier build, even though the season isn't based around arc. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And now that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit the like button as it helps out a ton. And if you are new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Would love to have you here for more Edge of Fate content on the way. And I will catch you in the next video. See you later.